Welcome back to Boccaccio and Wigs. We are on the first day, the fifth story. And if you recall, in the fourth story, we were delighted by Dionio's bawdy tale of the abbot and the monk who agreed to keep the secret of each other's philanderings with a young country girl. And you can see that Dionio has kind of raised the stakes. So we started off with some very pious religious morals, and then with each story we went into the affairs of men, and now we're just right into the sex stories. So the summary of our fifth story: by means of a banquet of chicken and some witty words, the Marchioness of Montferrato squelches the foolish love of the King of France. At first, the story told by Dionio pricked the hearts of the ladies who were listening with a bit of embarrassment, which was made evident by the modest blushes on their faces. But then, as they looked at each other, they could hardly keep from laughing, and they smiled as they listened. As soon as the story came to an end, they reprimanded Dionio with a few gentle remarks in order to show him that such tales were not to be told among ladies. Afterward, the queen turned to Fiammetta, who was seated on the grass near him, and commanded her to take her turn. With a cheerful expression, she gracefully began. It pleases me that with our stories we have begun to show how powerful the force of witty and ready retorts may be, and also how it is a sign of great intelligence in men always to seek the love of a woman from a better family than their own. And how in women, too, it is a mark of great discernment to know how to protect themselves from the loving attention of a man of greater station. So, lovely ladies, I have in mind to show you, in the story that is my turn to tell, how a noble woman with her actions and words protected herself from such a man and sent him packing. The Marquis of Montferrato was a most worthy man, a standard bearer of the church who had gone overseas on a crusade with a Christian army. And when there was talk of his merits at the court of King Philip the One-Eyed, who was making ready to depart on the same crusade, one knight remarked that there existed under all the stars in the world no couple equal to the Marquis and his lady. For inasmuch as he was renowned among knights for every virtue, his lady was likewise considered most beautiful and worthy among all the women in the world. These words took root in the heart of the King of France so deeply that without ever having seen her, he immediately and passionately began to love her. And he decided not to put to sea for the crusade from any port but Genoa, so that by traveling overland he might have a plausible reason for visiting the Marchioness. And with her husband away, he thought he could consummate his desires. He proceeded to carry out his scheme. After sending his troops ahead, he set out with a small escort and some noblemen. And when he neared the lands of the Marquis, he sent one of them ahead to the lady to tell her she should expect him to dine with her the next day. It's rather bold. The lady, who was prudent and wise, cheerfully replied that she considered this a great honor and that he would be most welcome. But then she began to wonder what all this meant, and the fact that a king would come to visit her when her husband was away, nor was she deceived when she concluded that he was drawn there by the renown of her beauty. Nevertheless, since she was a worthy lady, she prepared to honor him, and she gathered together all the eminent gentlemen still remaining at her court in order to make all the appropriate arrangements with their advice. She alone, however, would see to the banquet and the food. Without delay, she collected as many chickens as there were in the countryside and ordered her cooks to use only these chickens in the various dishes for the royal banquet. The king then arrived on the appointed day and was received by the lady with great festivity and honor. When he saw her, she seemed more beautiful, virtuous, and courtly than he had been given to believe from the knight's description, and he was greatly amazed and praised her profusely, discovering that his passion had become even more ardent upon learning that the lady was even more beautiful than he had imagined. And after he had rested for a time in bedchambers decorated suitably for the reception of a great king, it was time for the banquet. The king and the Marchioness were seated together, and the others, according to their station, were honored at their tables. The king was most pleased, for he was served with many courses accompanied by the finest and most precious wines, and moreover from time to time he would gaze at the beautiful Marchioness with delight. But as one dish followed another, he began to wonder, for at his table, no matter how many different dishes were served, all of them had been prepared with chicken. The king was familiar with the surrounding countryside and knew that it must be full of different game, and since he had announced his arrival to the lady, he felt he had given her ample time to plan a hunt. All this amazed him so much that he would have her talk of nothing but her chickens, and so he turned to her cheerfully, saying, "Madam, are there only hens and no cocks born in this part of the country?" The Marchioness, who understood his question very well indeed, and believed that God, according to her wishes, had provided a most opportune moment for clarifying her intentions, turned boldly toward him and answered, "No, my lord, but though they may differ in dress and rank, the women here are the same as they are elsewhere." When the king heard this remark, he understood very well the motive behind the banquet of chickens, as well as the virtue concealed beneath her words. And he realized that his words of persuasion would be in vain with such a woman, and that force was out of the question, thank goodness. And since he had unwisely become enamored with her, he now thought, for his honor's sake, to wisely extinguish the dishonestly conceived flames of his passion. So he continued to dine with no hope of success and with no further attempts at jesting, for he feared her retorts. And immediately after dinner, in order to cover up a dishonest arrival with a hasty departure, he thanked her for the honor she had done him, commended her to God, and left for Genoa. Good riddance.